All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. And it's good to see some new faces and still a couple of familiar faces. Welcome back to the Namibia Oil and Gas 2026, the fourth session. And this is specifically the local content masterclass brought to us by Rhino Resources. Thank you so much, all of you, for being with us, to our sponsors, for supporting us, and of course, of committing to this important engagement that will run for 3 days. And of course, nothing that promises historically perhaps the best time that Namibia finds itself into right now as we, of course, head into journey to first oil. All right, without further ado, as promised, at exactly 20 minutes past 2, which is now a minute already later, I would like now to call on our next session, which is session C, which will be on contractors. This session will be focusing on contractors as enablers of Namibia's local content ambitions that includes workforce localization, supplier development, procurement, skills development, and knowledge transfer. During this, of course, panel discussion, we hope to learn more in that regard. I think it's just fair that I quickly call on Mr. Tony Paul, Energy Policy and Strategy Advisor, Future Energy Partners. Let's give him a round of applause. All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. MC. Let me have a really distinguished panel here today. And it's a pleasure to be here once again in Namibia. And let me thank the organizers for inviting me back. Lovely to be here. Nice to see some old friends, old faces. You think about local content that we tend to think about is numbers, percentages, how much work gets done, people get employed, percentages. One of the things that we tend to miss is who's actually acquiring it. And ultimately, what are we leaving behind? So most of us most people don't understand that oil companies, operators, outsource by far the majority of their work to contractors, over 80% perhaps. And those are the ones who ultimately hire people, engage contractors, subcontractors, build capacity. But there's a whole process involved in that, from just training to building capacity. Ultimately, the question we should be answering is, at the end of this, how many Namibian companies can do the things that foreign companies now do? How many Namibians can export the services that are now imported? And to get there, we have to understand what's involved, how it works, what the challenges are, and the ways we can overcome that. What we've done today is try to answer some of those questions and connect some of the issues, because they're all related. It's not a single activity or a single line of inquiry. And the panel today is quite distinguished. It brings some real global leaders in the supply chain. It brings some local leaders, some African leaders, some emerging leaders. So we can bring that perspective. And when I introduce them, we have two panelists who will have presentations, short presentations, and then we try to have a conversation around the issues and try to have a flow between them. We're not going to be comprehensive in our answers. We're not going to be complete. We'll try to keep the answering and the language accessible to all. So we hope to have a question and answer session at the end, time permitting, and we try to get time, to ensure that we do help the audience to understand the issues that face them. So with that in mind, let me call to the stage my presenters, my panelists. And once they come to the stage, we'll have the two presentations. And at each point, the panelists will introduce themselves very briefly, not a bio by any means, so you know the perspective they're bringing. And then you hear the presentations. So with that in mind, let me move forward quickly, keep this introduction short, because there's a lot to speak about and very limited time. So in order, let me invite Francesco Luizzi of Jensen, Franco. Please come to the stage. Yeah, thank you. Let me bring Ranti Omole is an old friend from Nigeria. Ranti, please come to the stage. Niall Kuhn of McDermott. Oisley Land of Modec. Adilson Alumba, CEO and founder of Copia Group. Welcome to the stage, and let me start it off by asking Adilson to make a brief presentation on what his company does so we can move. Oh, who have I missed out there? Oh, Ben, sorry, where's Ben? Oh, that's why I didn't see it. My good friend from Nigeria. Ben, how can I forget you? We've been talking so much. Welcome. Thank you. So we have two presentations, one from Adilson and one from Ben, and then we have the conversation, which I will try to lead.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adilson Elumba, and I'm just trying to look for my beautiful wife. We just got married on Saturday. Where is she? I cannot see her. I told her not to come. We are a little bit tired from yesterday. I'm kidding. So, my name is Adilson. As I said, we are a family company, Copia Group of Companies. We are based in Angola. So Copia is about 13 years old, okay, and we have developed two softwares. According to my moderator, I have to be quick if I want to be part of the panel later on. So, continuing, Copia is probably now, because we are all the time changing the number of the employees or collaborators, and bear with my English. English is not my first language, so sometimes I'll make some mistakes. I will correct them in Portuguese, if you allow me. So we are around 250 people. In Angola, it's about a medium-sized company. We have the license to work in the oil and gas industry for the last 1 year. Before that, we are working as the leading supervision and oversight in Kakulu-Kabasa hydropower project, which is a 2,172 megawatts in Angola. It's the biggest in Southern Africa, and is as a local company to lead such a consortium of companies all over, it's an honor. So continuing, we were founded probably around, I said probably because there is a discussion between me and my wife, if it was when I signed it or when she signed it. So I signed in 2014, she signed in 2015 in the company. So we don't know exactly which year the company was open. So we, as a technical consolidation in 2015, then diversification from 2016 to 2020, and then 2020 now we are expansion and positioning. So in Angola, people already knows us. Now we are coming to Namibia. By the way, we are going to open our office here in Namibia next 20th of this month. I don't know if I can invite all of you because the drinks and food are limited, but you can come. We'll put the address at our booth here. So we are expanding and positioning our family company in Namibia. I started in Namibia back in 2002, from 2002 to 2005, so it's good to be back home. So now we have three pillars. It's better I look here. We have three pillars. When we are dealing with oil industry and gas, we always think that the oil and gas are the most important. We at Copia Group of Companies, we have a slightly different understanding. We think there are two most important than oil and gas. First one is people, okay? People actually retain the knowledge. They actually transfer the knowledge. And the number two is data. This is the most important thing. Those two are the most important thing that we consider at our company in this particular industry. So that's why reliable data, it's very important to make better decisions and to uplift the local capacity, okay? So next, this is some of our capabilities. We are only focused on the quality control and quality assurance. We don't do seismic acquisition, we do quality control. Personally, I worked for Sonangol before I joined Copia Group of Companies. So I worked for Sonangol for 10 years. And after Angolan Civil War ended back in 2002, Sonangol decided to do onshore acquisition in Kwanza Basin. Obviously, in the north of Angola, in Cabinda and Soyu, it was already happening some acquisitions. And I was happy to participate. I was coming out of the university, and we did the seismic acquisition of 2,600 kilometers, 2D, in an area of 25 square kilometers. And one of the biggest issues we found is the contractor, he does everything you wanted. No QC, no quality assurance. What about the data? What about where to position the source, where to position the receivers? They receive the seismic survey, design, and that's it. And then they report back to us. We, as a company, we specialized ourselves in doing supervision of those works, in seismic, gravimetry, magnetometry, and topography using drones. We focus more on technology. I will not go too deep on that because we are restrained with time. So, and then we also partner with a company based in Germany. I will not say the name of the company because Copia is the most important right now. But back in our stand, we can tell you the name of the company. So they developed a new technology, which Angola is already being used. I think Namibia already tested some things, and we want to bring it back to Namibia, which is the microbial perspective for oil and gas. Please, ladies and gentlemen, captains of industry, use this technology. It's very important. It can really help to allocate properly your well, appraisal well, exploration wells specifically. Then the other wells we already know all the data, but this is very important. We are representing them in Angola. We are bringing them back in Namibia as well. So our field expertise of field operations, data acquisition, QC, QA, obviously, geoscientific analysis, and the most important thing we want to, or I want to bring, my wife just came. I just saw her. Please, a round of applause to my beautiful wife. Thank you very much. Now my presentation will not be okay. When you are in love is the most important thing. Thank you. So one of the things we wanted to present, please tell me about the time so I will not waste all my time. So one of the things we want to show is about AI and machine learning. This is the future. The future is now. It's happening. So we at Copia Group of Companies, we have an area. It's 1 year old. It's research and development, and we created 2 softwares using AI and machine learning. One for seismic processing, which is Copia Size, and another one, I will say both, so I will not lose time. Another one is Copia Dynamic Sim for reservoir to check and everything. Copia Size, for me, is familiar because when I was working for Sonangol, I was connected with the exploration direction in Sonangol, so we were able to do all the seismic acquisition, which was my area, and then processing the data and then interpret the data. And one of the problems in Africa, I'm saying about Africa, is about the interpretation. It's very difficult to find African companies that what they do solely is interpret the data. You'll find in Europe, obviously, you'll find in America, some in Asia, Middle East, but Africa is really difficult. So we developed this software, which is, we introduced the seismic data, and we have an assistant, an AI assistant, By the way, this AI assistant, it was written by our own technicians, Angolans, totally Angolans. Not even one outside of Angola wrote the code of this AI, which please I will ask again a round of applause because believe me, it's not easy. I'll not take most of your time because if you want any more information, you can come to our booth. Is D05, if I'm not mistaken. So this is Copia size, and we have Copia Dynamic Sim, which is high fidelity machine learning based pressure, volume, and temperature. For those who are not familiar with oil and gas terms, you you will see a lot about PVT. It's simple. Sometimes we like to pretend we know a lot. It's just this pressure, volume, and temperature. Finish. Okay? But people, we do it on purpose. PVT, PVT. Simple as that. So reservoir data, simulation, machine learning scenarios, optimization. Namibia is starting now with the development, the final investment decision. You will need this. Namcor will need this. Total, everybody. They already have it, but they can still use it. Ours, it's local. It's local currency, so you don't need to spend a lot of money from euros or dollars. Okay? Then, participation is the start, obviously. That's why we are here. That's why we are opening our office. Local people, we need to work, okay? We need the jobs, okay? Local companies, we are already talking with some of the local companies to partner together to see if we can use our softwares at your companies. Rhino, this is their masterclass, but I don't see anybody from Rhino, so I'll catch them later. So we'll introduce the softwares to them. Okay. I don't know, Paul, if I have 1 minute more? Yes. Okay, quick one. So again, this is just to repeat the collaboration proposition, combining copy expertise with Namibian people, we can actually make a difference, okay? Please go to our booth, check Copia size. It's a great tool to do seismic interpretation using artificial intelligence and machine learning. It will cut the time for those who are familiar with doing data interpretation. Normally, it depends on the size of the area. You take, Tony knows better than me, you take maybe 1 year to 18 months. With this, you cut at least at half. So you save time and obviously you save money. So this is the ecosystem. I don't need to go through that because I want to participate on the panel. Reliable data, better decision, obviously. Some people think that AI machine learning is coming from the exterminator, but no, it's actually a great tool that will save time and save money. Okay, this is happening right now all over, and Copia is bringing a different perspective for the oil and gas. We are not the first ones, but we are in the game as well. I think it's finished. A couple of questions, which I'll be happy to answer later on if the time will allow us. So, Tony, I was okay on time?
Yeah, it's very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Don't leave it at this. I mean, you've done a fantastic job. One of the things that countries face, no, stay there, in oil and gas, is we hear these terms, that the oil and gas industry is high technology, high capital, high risk. And that is a signal to avoid those things.
Yes.
You've done something quite unique.
Thank you.
You've moved from participation to technology ownership.
Yes.
Yeah? Now, you've walked us through some of how you've done that. In your mind, given your experience, having studied in Namibia, knowing where Namibia is, what do you think Namibia needs to do, or Namibian companies need to do, to follow your footsteps, to create companies like yours who have indigenous technology that they can then sell to others rather than have to import it themselves?
Actually, it's a great question, Tony. and I'll answer using my own example. Obviously, I was working for our national oil company. I believe everybody knows Sonangol. It's a great company to work. But first of all, the Namibians need to understand what demands this industry requires from its own people, okay? It's something that in Angola, we, at least my generation, I am more than 40, less than 45, so my generation, we understood really well what oil and gas industry means to a country. It really changed the lives of the people in every, let's say, every corner of life. So what Namibians must do, they need to understand the industry. They need, last time I participated in one of the panels, I don't remember in which, but it was in Namibia. They need to understand exactly what is upstream, what is midstream, what is downstream, position themselves according to those areas of the industry, and start developing the skills necessary to participate. Normally, we talked about local content. My fellow panelists will talk a lot about the experience. They have more experience than me. All of this masterclass is about local content. But for me, as simple as that, local content is you understand the industry, you prepare yourself, you study, you investigate, you get the license, certifications, and then you start giving the documentation to the participate on the public contests, okay? There is no free meals. I don't believe in that, okay? Obviously, the local content, they need to have a share because the resources belong to the country, but the work needs to be done with quality, okay? International oil companies do not hire because it's in the law. They prefer not to hire and not to explore or not to produce. This is true, okay? So prepare yourselves, really investigate, create partnerships. You know, Europe, America, they are producing, they are exploring for probably 150 years. Namibia is doing now for, I don't know, maybe 15 years now, since 2011 when they start seismic, and now final investment decision, another 5 or 6 or 7 more years until the field will really start producing. So take this time, prepare yourself, take advantage of the law that I understand it was approved a few days ago, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't have the opportunity to read it yet, in details at least, but preparation is the most important, Tony. This is what I want to leave it here.
Let's join thanking Edison very much for that. That takes us naturally from the desired end state. Please do, which Edison has described to us, to the question of how people and companies actually build that capability. So Dr. Ben Oblele will join us now and present and focus on moving from training to productive capacity, starting with the real project demand and ending with competence, execution, and indigenous contractor base. So Ben is going to take us to how we get there, or his experience. Ben?
Thank you. I have already been introduced. I have the privilege to speak to us briefly, but it's going to be a bit thought-provoking. I will be talking on from training to productive capability, building Namibia's workforce and indigenous contractor base around real energy sector projects. I want us to take some 3-5 seconds, look at that picture. You see, it is a picture. These are Africans, our brothers. They have resorted to taking dangerous routes, inflatable boats, traveling from Morocco to Spain. Why do you think it has to be that way? We have a robust population, working, very active population, but you look at these statistics that I try to put here. When opportunity is not built at home, people follow elsewhere where they find that opportunity. This should be a point where Namibia needs to look inward and you see their irregular arrivals to those areas in 2024 was 46,843. And then that, I'm not worried about that, but I'm worried about dead or missing in 54 shipwrecks in 2025, 1,214. Why do you think that our youth have to go through these dangerous routes? Africa does not have a shortage of ambition. The problem is conversion. We don't actually convert what we have in terms of giving real value to our resources. We have been tagged peripheral countries. We have the developed countries who produce the industrial artifact that we use in our sectors. You cannot compare the costs of importation of this technology with our resources that we sell to them. That is where the real challenge is. That gap is what Namibia should focus right now in overturning. Now, what Namibia has at this stage, these are geological resources. But the real dividend must be institutional. How? You have to build strong institutions for you to be able to deal with the challenge, the complexities that come with the resources that are here, especially the next phase of evolution that you are entering. And then, why do you think that should be done? This is the capability building runway. Map demand now. You have to train against it, attach learning to projects, and graduate local firms into execution. That's what you need to do at this stage. Because if you do not build the right infrastructure with the right capability to man those infrastructure, you are going to run into some of the challenges that we have listed. Nigeria has become a reference point as far as energy resources are concerned. But there is one important point I want to make. If you have a 69-year-old father and you are just about a year, you will be looking forward to your father by learning from him. Psychology has taught us a trend called vicarious learning, learning by observation. That is the stage that Namibia is. You have to observe more. And when you observe, you take the lessons from there, and then you build your own industry depending on the strengths that you're able to put together. Now, I want us to look at the company that brought me here, the Solewan Group. Solewan is a 100% Nigerian company. It started about 26 years ago, and focusing on the demand that was at hand when the company emerged. The founders realized that there was a gap in the sector. That's why we're talking about analysis and understanding the sector. If you don't do that early enough and map skills, demand, and capability, you may be missing the mark. You may even fall victim to a problem that is top-down in terms of methodology and application of what you are doing, or middle-top, or middle-bottom. Where you are at the bottom of it. So you have to find space around the bottom where you are. Start building like you are building a house. You start from assessing, look for people to design the building for you. You source for materials. You have the money to go into the building. You start with the foundation up. That is how it's going to work. Bottom-top approaches in this kind of situation you are the best fit at the moment because it gives you time to understand the sector. It gives you time to make little mistakes because you have lessons that you are learning from. Now, project demand starts with work packages, occupational demand, and timing. Then you go to competency, certification, work exposure, and placement contracts. Build the workforce around real energy sector work packages. You look at the demand side. Focus more on the demand side. In basic economics, we were talked about demand and supply. Don't produce skills that are not needed at the moment. But there is a way you can go about it. The typology I will advise is that you start by refactoring your school curriculum. I was discussing with two young ladies here, Namibians. I asked the first one, you say you are in a university. What course are you studying? She said psychology. I asked the second one, what course are you studying? She said sociology and clinical psychology. Now, here is a big problem. That's why I started from building strong institutions. The educational sector had to be deliberate about skills that you are building at this very moment. You have to be intentional by creating avenues to attract young persons into geotechnical and geological areas. Engineering are highly technical areas. You can do scholarships. you can do overseas trainings, you can do internships, but make that sector very attractive. If you don't make it very attractive, because it demands more time to read and to compute those things. Not all are good in mathematics and further mathematics and in physics and all of that that you require to study these courses. So you have to design something on a short term, maybe 5 years educational program that you have to refactor your curriculum to suit the area that you are right now. The energy demands should take focus and prominence in that aspect that you're doing. I'm not saying that sociologists or economists or whatsoever is not important. They are still important, but those that have graduated already, it will be at the point of pivot. Because in Nigeria, what you study in the university may not apply to what you do in the industry. All you need to do is trainings. You reskill, you upskill, and then at both levels, you can, if you're already in the industry, you do vertical skilling or horizontal, however it is, you compound your capabilities in such a way that you will be attracted into the energy sector. And with your various experience, you are going to have more advantage, more than those who are running straight graduate trainees into the sector. Experience counts. It counts in terms of entrepreneurship. When you become an entrepreneur, you will understand that multiplicity of experiences in your day-to-day operation helps to give you advantage over those that are just coming into the sector. Now, technology transfer is not a workshop. It is not a transfer of liabilities. You must be ready to take responsibility. Soliwan has done this over the years. For 26 years now, they have used the capabilities they have built so far to establish Soliwan Energy Training. In fact, I was in the university. I had, like I was discussing before now, a 5-minute chat with the group chief executive officer. It didn't take him 5 minutes to convince me that I belong to his sector. Because he saw, when I had that interaction, we had to refactor so many things into the 10-year investment plan that he has, the Soliwan Roadmap Plus, which has brought Soliwan into Namibia. Today, one of our 6 subsidiaries is registered as a Namibian company. Why do we have to do that? We are going to transfer our technology. Of course, when you approach the OEMs for technology, and then you sign agreement with them, you have to consider one thing. If you don't consider training your staff in a way that they will man that technology, you will remain a dependent to them in terms of maintenance, if there is breakdown, and the downtime is not good for contractors. You lose a lot of money when your equipment breaks down at the middle of production. You have timelines from the companies you are working for to deliver, and your equipment breaks down. You cannot do, you import technicians to come and handle it. This is a huge challenge that in Soliwan we have done that. By the Institute, we train internally and also externally. So at this point, it is left for institutions in Namibia like the Namibia Training Authority and the Petro Fund I heard they mentioned about here a while ago to come together and construct a system of skill impartation, training and retention. Somebody mentioned something about retention. It could be a deliberate policy now for the government. When you train, there should be an agreement that as we are sending you for overseas or for training, you come back, you must work for a number of years with us. If you want to go, before you can go. While you know that this person might leave, then there is a need for young persons understanding the experienced one that you have spent huge amount of money to train overseas. Now, an African lesson here for us is that capability grows when policy meets plans, people and products. This is the Soliwan typology that I'm sharing here with us. In Soliwan, we have people, plant, products, and solutions. That is the mantra that we have that has built the ecosystem that is currently standing in over 156,000 square meters in our industrial area in Une, River State, with extension to Namibia at the moment. You train people. Our own typology is in pipe milling, coating, fabrication, laboratory, and preservation facilities. Engineer, we train people. We have trained a lot of engineers, technicians, coating specialists, and in various training pathways. And then project, we have executed over 125 projects for IOCs based on the competencies that we have built over the years. Now, this is what Namibia should consider and what I think they should avoid. I may not have the time to read through all of this because my position here is very short. But I will be taking questions if they come, and if you want the slide, you can approach the organizers to let you have it. Now, I want to run forward to something that is quite disturbing for me. A gentleman called Richard Orty studied a whole lot of countries. Why did he do that? He called it the natural resource cost. It's actually a paradox. He noticed that in every country where there are extractive resources, those countries were very dependent. They were weak. The mentality towards, any resources was weak also. So he realized that if you come to Nigeria, to the first oil well in Oluebiri, you will understand exactly what I'm talking about. The community is abandoned. No water, no road, no school, nothing. But that was the first place that oil was discovered in Nigeria. That is the paradox that Richard Orty has won that I need to emphasize, then I'll go and sit down. Now, you have to say no to issues of entitlement, issues of rent seeking. These are liabilities. You put yourself in a disadvantaged position when you go to negotiate. You don't have the ability to work. You don't have the right technology. You don't have the strong institutions to back you up. You become a liability. What they give to you, you take. What percentage that comes to you, you take. No. But if you're able to, turn this paradox into the positive by building all what I've tried to explain here, you are in an advantaged position to negotiate. And on that note, I want to mainly say again that do not merely produce oil, produce capability. That is your strongest advantage you have now in the International Committee of Nations. So you can balance your trade, your international trade. Terms of trade should be in favorable terms if you're able to do this consistently over time. So that the lessons from some of the countries that have been referenced here will not haunt the great people of Namibia. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Before you leave, Ben, you've made project demand the starting point rather than a trading catalog. For that to work, somebody has to make feature demand visible early enough to Namibian training institutions, workers, contractors. What information should they make available? What timeline, how early should they make it available to Namibians? And should somebody coordinate this? And if so, whom?
Okay. This is the deal, and I think it's the real deal. The thing is that skills and certificates, if they don't communicate with one another, you will end up having a situation of mismatch. You produce people, but these people are not useful to you. What you need to do now is that you do opportunity mapping. You're able to look at your internal economic parameters, develop a typology of needs around what you have, and then you match opportunities to those needs. So you filter your personnel that you want to train, the demand side and the supply side communicating with one another. Once you're able to do that, you are going to have a pool of highly technical and efficient workforce to service those sectors. And I will not leave without mentioning the importance of entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs are co-creators in the business of maintaining what God had created for us. The ideas that are in the head, they are the ones that rule the world. Put the ideas into business models. Some of the most successful businesses here started that way. They started from ideas. Ideas, you must implement them. And when you implement those ideas, they should speak to the sector gaps that you have. And be prepared to take over when the IOCs leave, because they are leaving Nigeria already now. If Nigeria had not been prepared over time, we would have been in a very difficult situation. But when they left, some of the persons who over time were understudying the IOCs were able to mop up capital with their industry experience they've built and created business models that they are here presenting to us today. This is something doable. It requires intentions, it requires commitment, and the implementation should be clear. Don't start from the highly complex ones. Contractors can start, because local content has become a thing, like maybe supply chain or procurement. No, you can do more than that. There are so many value chains, right from the downstream, midstream, upstream. Look at the ones that you feel more comfortable in dealing with. And then you upskill your knowledge. add some value to what you have, additional value in terms of knowledge is power. If you don't have the right knowledge, you may not be able to function because the industry is highly technical and it requires a whole lot of intellectual resources, not only financial resources. Another thing again is that you have to, I think I have over-egged on this point, you convert financial resources first into human resources. Because these are two things. You have the money, you can take the loan, but if you don't have the human resources to implement what the money is meant for, you will fail. That is why most startups don't go beyond 5 years. It's not because of the model, but it's because of how the founders or contractors or whatever you want to call them have been able to interpret what they have put together in their business models. I think if this is done, we can start seeing good results out of Namibia.
Thanks, Ben. One final question, Ben, and give me a quick answer. To get the right competency, you're saying you need to have the project demand visible. In terms of granularity, what kind of information should companies, EPC contractors, operators provide? Should they provide a 5-year work program? Should they provide a procurement schedule? Should they provide some capacity needs down the road? What kind of information is useful for Namibians to be able to plan to participate?
Good. Number one is there has to be a central database system. The truth about it is that this is an information age. Don't shy away from it. We Africans, we are always the last to adopt technology. Some advanced technology in the sector has already been, breaking grounds. Leverage technology. That's number one. If you leverage, a lot has been said about technology here. Create technology that applies to your local problems. Don't import technology that is inappropriate. A gentleman that spoke before now, he did mention something about that. I don't want to go that route. Once you have a central database information system, you make them interoperable, which means one sector speaking to the other. So that when you come into the sector, you have almost everything you need. You have the right information, you have the right resources to network, you have the enabling environment in terms of policy and in terms of legislation also, working together. If you do not have the right laws to protect the infant industries that are going to emerge, they may not be strong enough to compete with the global giants. That's why local content policy is important, but it shouldn't just be a policy that is disconnected. It should be a policy that speaks to real sector needs. It should protect the resources of the country and promote the people who are willing to take risk, because entrepreneurship involves a lot of risk. You must be ready to take that risk, not just ordinary risks, calculated risks. And you asked about time. It depends on the sector people may be interested in. It may take 2 years, it may take 4 years, it may take 5 years, but there should be a roadmap of 5-year plan. When you get to 5 years, you put your lessons together. Where are you doing well? Where are you not doing well? These lessons will inform the next phase of your advancement. You can move from 5 years to 10 years, and then from 10 years, you can go forward. We in Soliwan, I mentioned it before, we have a strategic 10-year roadmap plus. We just finished, 2 years ago, we exhausted the first phase of the 10 years plan that was established, which brought about 4 of our plans. Now, in the 10 years of Africa-wide investment, that's why we're in Namibia here. We've built 2 plants. Last year, we commissioned the automated bend coating plant, which deals with irregular shapes. Because where a pipeline runs, it doesn't run on a linear structure. Sometimes there could be bends, T-joints, and all of that. That aspect alone used to be handled by foreigners because of the technical depth of what is required. So what we did, I don't want to go into the presentation again, but let me just make this point because it's very important. What we did, we commissioned a special research using the Dutch technology, Euro-Asia and American technology. We put researchers together working with us from the University of Ibadan to deal with that problem. How do we respond? Because when there is oil spillage, most times it starts from those regular bends. The coating has to take a different shape, high level of technical requirement in terms of calculations and all of that. They came with that research report. That was the basis of what we used to establish that automated bend coating plan. The same we've done this year. Just on the 31st of July, we commissioned the Soliwan Specialty Protective Coatings and Paints Limited, which we remodified our paints and other products, 11 different products, which we launched yesterday here, into the market to deal with areas of high technical requirements. Geotechnical areas that require sophisticated treatment, we have the solutions to it. It is a product of research. Don't separate research and development from your business. This is what helps you to grow. It gives you the data and the timelines to work with. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ben. We've heard two complementary propositions. Addison has described the destination, moving from participation towards genuine technical capability and ultimately technical autonomy. Ben has described one pathway to getting there, starting with the actual project demand, developing competence around it, providing work exposure, and progressively transferring responsibility. I now want to test how that works inside the realities of actual projects. When companies enter a new market like Namibia, when projects are designed, when work is packaged and procured, and when local companies actually have to qualify to compete. Let me start with you. In our earlier conversations preparing for this, we emphasized starting early and establishing a proper baseline. What should an international contractor like you actually be doing differently when it enters an emerging petroleum province like Namibia, if it genuinely wants to develop local capability, rather than respond to local content requirements after the project is already defined?
Okay. I'll start off by explaining that local content for...
And if you can please just introduce yourself briefly so people know who you're...
Okay, I'm O.C. Hyundai. I'm Director of Business Development for MODEC. And MODEC is an EPCI contractor that delivers FPSOs, TLPs, FSOs, floating production systems, basically, globally. We are a Japanese company, so I am not allowed to say that we are the world leader in delivering these systems. So I'll go on and start. Basically, we have a situation where we enter into a country, and what local content should not be is a box to check when delivering your solution. And what we found is that when entering these countries, what has brought success to us is being able to understand that you need to start early in your local content. So starting off with your training programs, it wouldn't make sense to many companies, but we, in some cases, have started as early as 4 years when we enter into a country with the types of training that we would bring into the country. So to answer the question, what we would do differently is starting our programs earlier than what you would normally expect, because that is what would lead to success, is being able to integrate yourself into the country, understand the country, and commencing your programs, your initiatives early, not just to meet your local content board or regulator and just to tick a box and to say that you're delivering on local content, but going in early and being able to create value for the country, understanding the country, and being able to deliver on what the pain points are for that country. So it's not just for what you can gain out of it, but what you can deliver for the country. And when doing that, you find that the country will be rooting for you. And we've experienced that in many of the countries we've worked in. Thank you.
In coming in, you've spoken in our conversation about establishing a proper baseline. What's involved? What are the things you're looking for in getting a proper baseline? If you're going to build capacity, build competency, you establish what's there. What's involved in doing that?
It's basically each company, whether they like it or not, will have to carry out some type of baseline study of the country, and studying what the country is good at, what's their resource optimization is, and being able to tweak that to the oil and gas sector. For example, here in Namibia, you already have a situation where you have the fisheries, and that's highly developed. You do already have your mining sector, you have other sectors that if they were to pivot into the oil and gas, they've already got some skill set that could be used in this industry. And getting companies, local companies, to understand that what they are doing could be used in the oil and gas sector, even though they may not understand exactly what the oil sector entails. I do recall an example of this is a study we did in Ghana, where we went in and we did a 6-month baseline study there. We had someone stationed there for 6 months, and all he was doing was going out every day, strapping up his shoes, going out every day and talking to local companies and trying to figure out what they do and to convince them to pivot to the oil and gas industry. And one example of this is when he went up to a mechanic and talking to them, a mechanic that just serviced cars, and trying to get them to understand that just a little bit more effort in getting a certification in welding could get him projects that would yield millions for his company, and which was successful. So that's the type of thing that would need to be done in understanding what this industry entails.
I have a follow-up, and then I'll follow up with Francesco. You made the point in our conversations that some capabilities take years to develop. Ben made the point that projects determine the demand, but projects have long life cycles, from feed to design to actual procurement. What decisions need to be made when, so that you have enough time?
I didn't hear you.
What decisions need to be made when in the project life cycle, so you can start developing capacity? Because sometimes tenders come out, people are asked to provide a service, but they haven't been prepared early enough in the life cycle. Early on in the project life cycle, from feed, that is being designed. At what point should local companies be aware or have an opportunity to build capacity in the project life cycle if some things take years?
Okay, that goes into a different topic, which deals with the contractors themselves. And I'll answer that from another angle. What we have found with our experience is talking to the local entities like you've mentioned may not be the best approach. One of the things that we have observed create success in local content is involving the tier 1 contractors and incentivizing them. So what that would entail is, rather than focus on pulling in the local companies, you work with your tier 1 contractors and incentivize them to go out and partner with local companies. And that way, through the process, the timeline that you're talking about, you do have the incentive to draw in local companies to participate in your project. And that fosters local content better than anything else we've done.
So the tier 1 companies, like yourself, are the ones who have the long lead view of the demand.
I was referring to our tier 1 companies.
So there you see it, right? There you see the dilemma we face.
Right.
At what point do the last line of the chain, the local suppliers, have visibility on demand?
Exactly. So we create that demand from higher up in the value chain so that it trickles down. Right. Trying to jump them to go to the local companies may not work entirely because they're too far out of your sphere of influence. So what you do is you work with the companies that you interact with and you incentivize them and they go out and bring in these companies.
And when you say incentivize them, do you set them some mechanism to say, I want to make sure that the locals can supply something?
It's quite simple. In awarding contracts, we create a structure where we give out our contracts based on how much it is you've been able to, you show us your contract with a local company, and we see if it's just a paper exercise or if you're truly going to go through the process of training, what you would term as Namibianization. All of these things are things that we would look at, how you would go about carrying out your procurements, your sourcing of resources. All of these different things are things that we would look at in assessing awarding a contract to one of the tier 1 contractors. And in doing that, we're able to then generate local content because we're incentivizing them rather than punishing them for it.
Thank you. Let me follow up with Francesco. Francesco, from your perspective, again, as an international supplier, from Jensen's perspective, how early is commercially realistic for international contractors to begin building relationships with government, with universities, with training institutions, and with prospective suppliers? If you enter a new market like Namibia, what's the time that you should start building those relationships?
Thank you, Tony. So I'm Francesco Leuzzi, and I'm the country manager of Jensen Namibia. We are very proud to be in Africa for more than 30 years now. We are in Nigeria, Ghana, and freshly in Angola with our fantastic Agogo. And indeed, this journey in African countries or in countries in general start early before the first oil. And I must say that what is happening in Namibia is quite unique. We are part of this journey, but I can see that a lot of stakeholders do the same thing. In general, I must say that the oil and gas service company invest a country when they have a project or they believe that there is a high chance to have a project. What happened in Namibia from every front is that Jensen production first, but a lot of stakeholders decided to come here and build the petroleum industry in Namibia because Namibia needed this support. Namibia needed the know-how that all these international companies have been built for years in other countries. I want to take the example of Nigeria and Ghana. We invested this country 3 or 4 years before the first oil. Today, our FPSO has an average of 80% of local on board. In Nigeria, it is even more. And that is the engagement with the operators, the engagement with the authorities, the engagement with the communities, the engagement with the students. We are here from almost 3 years now. We send 16 cadets in South Africa to be trained because we believe in action. It's nice to come and discuss in this panel discussion, but we need action. We send 16 cadets in South Africa. Presently, we have 4 young talent in Ghana that
are going through on-the-job training to be ready when we will be ready. We supported the authorities, namely NAMCOR, Petroleum Commission, sending few engineers from here and spend time with our engineers in Oslo. All these actions take a lot of time, a lot of engagement, a lot of awareness. I remember when we started at the universities a few months ago, only few students knew what was an FPSO. There was a common knowledge on rigs, but nobody knew what was an FPSO. We settled a set of lecture at Namibia Energy Institute to create awareness on what is an FPSO. And as you said, this thing takes time, and I believe that is the best way to build a local content, or I like the word that some of us use, local uplift, because the talents are here in Namibia. You need just to groom them, and the opportunity are here for all of us. And we are sure that our method works. These early engagement, these mentoring with a succession plan, a young talent on board. Because nowadays, the person that, the locals in Nigeria and in Ghana that we trained 10 years ago are training the Angolans or the Namibians where we freshly arrived.
Thank you, Francesco. Niall, let me take this into actual project execution. How do you reconcile ambitious local content objectives with the contractor's obligations around cost, HSE, quality, schedule, technical complexity, quality? How do you reconcile those challenges or issues?
Okay, thank you very much. Hi everyone, my name is Niall Kuhn. I'm the global head of supply chain for McDermott, which is a 100-year-old actual company that have developed EPCI projects around the world, mostly offshore and subsea. In Namibia, we're focused on the first subsea development. So from my point of view, the key learnings that we've had as a company from executing basically all over the world is that you can't have kind of project execution and delivery actually competing like with local content, you know. So people sometimes view that you have to pick one or the other, which is absolutely not the case. What you need to do is you need to ensure that safety, quality, cost, and schedule, along with local content, is built into your plan from the very beginning. Like as contractors, we have a responsibility, especially in emerging markets, that we have to transfer our knowledge and our skills. That is the fundamental difference that we need to look at. When we go to a country that has a track record, has an experience of executing projects, you do not execute the same way in both regions. You have to account for that, but you have to build that into your plan. If you don't build it into your plan, then you will not be able to do it. The key messages that we have really is in terms of you cannot compromise for safety, you cannot compromise for quality. You know, we have to bring the local supply chain up to the level that is required to execute a project as complex as what is planned in Namibia, which I think is fundamentally important to explain, because we're talking about subsea developments like in 3 kilometers of water depth, you know, as the first project that's going to be executed in this country. That's not something that's happened before in any country around the world. So like people need to appreciate that. So what's important is that you need to build a phased development approach when you deal with local content, when you're talking about EPCI execution, the type that McDermott have to execute. So in terms of when I say phase, as in you cannot, you know, we understand that we will not have the skill set to execute our offshore projects from the start in terms of technical engineering analysis. that's understood. So what we need to do is, there's a huge development, there's a huge opportunity, so when you phase, there's lots of opportunities for the first phases in terms of logistics, in terms of transportation, in terms of warehousing. Then you move into technical services, you move into quality, you move into inspection, you have engineering fabrication, from complex to less complex. Then you have, then you're talking about your future project managers, your future, there's an academy process that we need to build. As part of McDermott, we always develop our local trainees, and we work them through up the system to make sure that, we understand that day one, we're not going to have a team of locals that can take over packages from day one, but there is certain aspects and certain scopes that we can do. You have a developed industry in mining, there's a lot of similar skill sets that we can reach from. So the talent is here. It's just about the application, the training, and ensuring that the standards that we need as an EPC contractor from our clients, that what they expect in terms of industry standard, that needs to be met. We cannot lower the standards to increase local content. That's just not an option.
Thank you, and that's an interesting point. What we recognize is that there's the operator and contractors and subcontractors. And so there's a chain, as it were. The question for you is, how much scope does a contractor like you actually have to change the outcome through your procurement strategy, your pre-qualification, and the way you make work packages? What kind of scope do you have? And tell us about that.
Yeah, no problem. So in terms of the scopes that we have to execute in country, we are 100% reliant on subcontractors. As in, we have a certain scope that we execute on our vessels, but we are reliant for basically everything else. So in terms of the process, so we cannot take the same process that we apply in a developed country to the first development in Namibia. We can't package, we can't structure all the packages the same way. We can't have the same actual pre-qualification process, and we can't provide the same actual timeline that we would give in other places in the world, because we understand that it doesn't provide the opportunities unless the work is packaged. Sometimes we want to combine everything together and go out to the market, provide a set amount of time, and then we expect three or four parties that are capable to do it. We know we can't do it over here. We need to provide more time. We need to explain the pre-qualification, the actual process, in a much more structured way than what we would do in a developed industry. So what we need to do is we need to have a series of workshops. We need to break up the work in such a way that it's possible to increase the local content and to bring up the standards to the level that we need, and also not compromise the schedule, the quality, and the delivery, which is an expectation from our client. So it's a balanced approach, Tony, really. We have to break things down, but we also have to provide more time and more on-the-ground training in terms of the qualification process, and to give enough time for the companies to be able to actually develop, to upskill, to maybe combine with another international company, so at least they can see what the scopes are, the different ways we can break them down, so they have time to develop that. If you just go to market and provide them a few weeks, we know that's not possible. So you're basically, even though there are companies that are technically capable of doing the work, if you don't provide them the time and the visibility, they can't be expected to be able to deliver, which is something that we can't allow for. And that's the requirement as a contractor in an emerging market.
Thanks, Niall. Ranti, you and I have been talking about this for many years, and Niall has given the international company perspective on some of that. Tell me, from your perspective, you've said to me in the past that local service contractor perspective can look quite different from the international service provider. Where do procurement, qualification, and packaging, bundling up arrangements create genuine opportunity for local suppliers, and where can they be inhibitors for local suppliers?
Okay. My name is Ranti Omole. I'm the CEO of Radia Circle. 30 years old service company, and I'm squeezing between people that pay my bills. So basically, we do electrical, mechanical instrumentations and navigations offshore. So we work on all their FPSOs, and we support them in Africa and also outside Africa. So invariably, as McDermott, Yinsin, Modec, FPSO owners, FPSO operators, the local content compliance to them, the local content requirements, at times, is more of a compliance than what is actually feasible, in the sense that maybe from the baseline studies, certain capacities are supposed to be available locally, and they are coming to a new frontier, and based on those calculations, certain jobs are expected to be given to the locals. But at the end of the day, they struggle to meet that. But for us, as local service providers, we see those requirements as opportunities. We see them as where we either have capacity, when we don't have, where we look for partners, that we can actually be part of the game. Now, looking at what it is, from the feed, typically it's when you try to get in, either to be an approved service provider or have your OEM products as part of what they're going to use. So if you're lucky to have your products as part of a product specified to be used, maybe the electrical systems, instrumentations, generators, and whatever, if you're lucky to have those products specified and built, even if you don't supply directly, but the fact that you have partners or global OEMs that support them provides you the opportunity. So very important is to be on the vendors list or approved products list. That's strategic. And that assures that you can be part of the game, either directly or in partnership. Now, Namibia is deep offshore. So that means the production facilities will be constructed from either China, somewhere in Asia. So which means most of the packages will be done out there. Even in Nigeria, most of where we feature prominently are the onshore support activities, doing the hookup and commissioning, the fabrication of the buoys, the suction piles, and things that are domiciled, that must be done locally. So that provides us a lot of opportunities. And very few actually get involved in the topside solution provision. But if you have partners who have their products there, it gives you that advantage. So for Namibia to maximize the opportunities in the procurement process, they need to look at, first of all, most of the supportive onshore activities. They need to partner with most of the OEMs that have the solutions on board. Because once your solution is on board, you are made until maybe for the next 40 years, or the lifespan of the FPSO. Even when they want to do mean life extension, you're still part of it. They want to do upgrades, you'll be part of it. Then, the hookup and commissioning. That means when they are towing the FPSO to Namibia, a lot of support vessels, logistic bases, PSVs, and I learned about the breakwater, and others. So really, the critical mass of activities locally will be around the hookup and commissioning.
That's an interesting point of departure. You said Nigeria has been able to take on more complex jobs on land and deliver it themselves. So in doing that, you would have learned some things. The question is, what are those things that you would have learned in Nigeria on land that can move Namibian companies from just participating to actually delivering complex services? And let me talk about the partnerships with experienced companies. What are the kinds of things that actually work to get knowledge transfer? Mentoring, joint execution, secondments, embedded technical support. What turns exposure, meaning seeing it, to actually real capability?
Okay, so let me take it from the first one. The fabrication yards in Nigeria. So they have the capacity to fabricate some of the packages. You have a couple of EPC service companies who also can do a lot of work. And of course, the fact that we have the natural propensity to invest, to seek opportunities, take advantage of what is there, even without the government's support. So we are quite knowledgeable about the host chain, about breaking the FPSO down into various modules. So we know how and where we can position to be part of the game. Now, in terms of the skills transfer, technology transfer, it's quite a dicey game because there are proprietary technology that keep the business in place. So it will be very difficult to carry your proprietary technology and hand over. But what we do is that when we understand the various components of the production facilities, and we focus on certain specializations, we identify the various OEMs, we invest in training of the people, we invest in certifications, because the fact that you are trained or skilled in compressors, generators, automation systems, it doesn't mean that you will get the job. Because no facility owner will want to take a risk on somebody who is not certified by that particular OEM. If you take generator, for example, Perkins, Caterpillar, the fact that you have Perkins certifications doesn't mean I will hand over Caterpillar maintenance to you, because there are guarantees, there are warranties that if anything happens, Caterpillar say, oh, you know what? The guy that did the job, did we certify him? Is he competent? So typically, OEM certifications, very, very important. And when you are lucky to be part of the complete process, that means be part of the engineering design. It exposes you to the intricacies and the components of the project, and then maybe part of the integration process, and then hookup and commissioning. So when you get involved in those chains, it actually helps you to position the local service providers that will handle the post-installation maintenance, because really, that's where the money is. When they bring the FPSO down, it's going to produce for the next 30, 40 years. So if you have people who are already knowledgeable about the products, about the services required on the FPSO, it becomes quite easy.
Thank you, Randy. Francesco, from the international contractor side, which of these mechanisms of knowledge transfer, mentoring, joint execution, secondment, embedded technical support, which of those have you found actually transfers competence rather than providing training?
Thank you, Tony. I believe I mentioned it a bit earlier. We have this 5 years succession plan that is a fantastic tool. And I know you don't like stats, but
I love stats.
the reality is there that it works, and the number of locals on board of our vessel grow. This 5 year succession plan see locals shadowed by expat or not expat, but expert in the sector. And this full immersion in the day-by-day work enriched by punctual training, allow the young talent, the young student to grow fast. And for that, nowadays, we are very proud of our fleet and the local content that we have in our fleet. And this is the key. Invest immediately in the young talent and give them the opportunity to work immediately. Obviously, you need a base. We are not naive. You need engineers that had a proper training, but the full immersion is what works. And I mentioned it before, I'm very proud that young Ghanaian engineer went to support Angola's engineer in commissioning our FPSO in Angola. So yes, succession plan, 5 years, and believe in these fantastic talents that Africa owns.
Very good, thank you. Oyster, let me come back to you. You have referred to contractor peering. What makes a peering arrangement genuinely developmental rather than simply putting an international local company together to satisfy a requirement? What makes that peering genuinely developmental?
Okay, in terms of pairing with these companies, what works is when you're able to find skill sets that's not only work for, you can be, let me move aside for a second from the FPSO and explain something. Whenever you're working local content, we can come into a country and be selfish and come in to try to find companies that will serve us. Each of you in here can do that if you're an international company. But then for the country itself to benefit from you coming into their country, what they're looking for is more cross-pollination over other industries. So when talking about pairing, what we need to do is to sit back and look at it more in an altruistic fashion rather than thinking selfishly of what would benefit us. I'll give a small example. In Angola, we went in, and one of the things we were trying to do was to see how far we could push local content. So we worked at pushing a local firm to get engineers trained and working on pressure vessels. And we got them partnered with an Asian company to come in and build pressure vessels in country. Here's the problem. On a vessel, you need a couple of pressure vessels. When you're done building it, then what? So you've pushed technology to the end, you've transferred the technology, you've gotten Angolans to build a pressure vessel, but then what? Now, at the same time, there was a lady that was setting up gardening services. Now, she comes in and she's working for Sonangol, she's working for Subsea 7, she's working for all the different companies, just simply doing gardening services, but she focused on the oil and gas sector. I'm sure the Angolans in here know who I'm talking about. She owns helicopters, she owns airplanes. She's now huge there. Why? Because she was able to take a skill set, develop it, and she's not only working for the oil and gas sector now, she's now working across other industries. So when doing this, stepping back and being able to look at it holistically for the country in the country's eyes, not necessarily what can you do for me lately on an FPSO. That's not the answer that would help the country out. It's looking at it from a Namibian standpoint and being able to look out 10 years from now and ask yourself, how does this benefit Namibia in 10 years? And in doing that, you can then unlock the value of local content.
Thanks, Oyster. We're running out of time, and I do want to give the audience a chance to ask some questions. But before that, let me ask a rapid question for each panelist here, and keep your answers to 30 seconds, if you can, please. And I'll start with you, Oyster. If local content is neither purely a government obligation or something contractor can deliver alone, what specifically must government operators and contractors each do? 30 seconds.
What should,
if it's not just a government obligation, what specifically should government operators and contractors each do? Give me some high-level things. I mean, most important thing each of them should do to make local content work.
What I would say that governments should do is, rather than Namibia setting up their regulator now for local content, and I know this goes against the thinking of most of the local firms here, but rather than regulate in form of punishment to, look, any of the companies that are coming in here with a briefcase are coming here to make money. They're not coming here to plant flowers for Namibians. So that idea needs to be wiped away. And what the Namibians need to understand is that rather than using a cane to get people to do local content, it's incentivizing them to do local content. And then there's the new, what's the advent of the oil and gas industry across Africa now, is that you now have a situation where you're competing with other countries. So you're now competing with Angola, you're competing with Senegal, you're competing with Equatorial Guinea. So Namibia has to make itself attractive to these companies coming in. And in terms of local content, it's just incentivizing these companies to do more, not necessarily regulating them to death, where what we would do when we come into a country is assess the local contents, but we're assessing it next to Ghana, next to Angola, and so on and so forth. And what we would do is, once we see that a country is too onerous, we just shut down there and go somewhere else and establish where it's beneficial to us. So we would look at that optimization of our profits when looking at this. And I'm just being real. I'm speaking as an African now, not as MODEC. So I'm speaking to the Africans in the room. So what I'm talking about is us working at developing local content in a format that is beneficial. It's a win-win for everyone. So that's what I would advocate for, and that's something that's I have been advocating for several years. I wasn't too successful in my own country, but hopefully Namibians can get it right.
Thanks, Oyster. And it's important to have every perspective on the table to come to a good solution. Niall, and again, a quick answer. What is one thing operators or EPC contractors need to do earlier? If you're trying to build capacity, transfer capability, what should companies do earlier in the process?
It's all about defining the demand curve for the skills that we need. That is absolutely fundamental to everything that we're speaking about here. We want to have the right skills at the right time, and that's what's fundamental. So without knowing exactly what type of work is coming and what skills are required to execute that work, it's not possible for the economy to do that. So I think visibility, transparency, workshops, much more engagement. There was we did a session with Petrofund in April where we where there was a panel of contractors presented the types of scopes and the works and the skill sets that we need to do for the projects, for the next imminent project that we expect to be announced hopefully in this country. We need to do more of that in more detail so people can study, understand what they need to do to meet the actual pre-qualification process that is expected at like a contractor level to execute projects of that type of complexity. I think that's really, really key. And the onus is on the contractors as well as the government to arrange that and to facilitate that.
Thanks, Niall. Ranti, what is one thing local contractors need to do themselves?
I think for the local contractors to be effective, all the stakeholders must be in alignment. More like, the government, the operators, agreeing on targets, local content plan, showing those opportunities to the service providers, and then the service provider can now come up, either through investment, through partnership, to be able to take advantage of the opportunity mapped out. If you invest and there is nothing mapped out, it's a wasted investment. So, and also, when the intention is to have something at the back of the project, what you want to have after the project, then that will also help to align the local service providers to be able to position and be part of the legacies that will come after the project.
Thank you. Francesco, for one thing international contractors should do to make transfer real, to make knowledge transfer real, capability transfer real?
Believe in the youth, and as I said, Namibia remember me a bit of Ghana when we started 12 years ago. There were no petroleum engineers, there were no skilled people ready for the industry. And we started to invest in younger Ghanaian talent, engineers, but we started to believe, for example, in civil engineers because there were not petroleum or mechanical engineer available. And we did the right bet at the end because though these youth were not totally fitting with the position, the wish, this wish of grow, this wish of improve, make their own success. So yes, believe in the youth from every corner, even if we will not find in Namibia the exact skills that we need.
Thank you. Adilson and Ben, I haven't forgotten you. 30 seconds. Adilson, one thing technology companies can contribute.
Thank you. If you allowed me 10 seconds, it's just to let every Namibians hear that all those companies that were local content a few years back, and now they are international contractors. Copy, a group of companies, the local content in Angola and in Namibia is international, so it's possible. We need to develop our technology, simple as that. They did it, they are here now. We have in Angola developed this technology that we just presented to you earlier today. And with technology is the future and it's happening today. So Namibians, local companies, as I said, position your companies, understand the oil and gas business. I have my colleagues saying to me, normally they told us that it's very complex. I don't believe that. We need to study, we need to prepare ourselves, we need to train, and when we feel ready, we go and we conquer. The oil is in Africa. So we just need to work. And we need, obviously, the help of the international contractors. We need to partner with them. We need to understand. And I believe when they come to a country like Angola, Nigeria, or Namibia, yes, they need to work with the local companies. Otherwise, I don't believe it will work at all. This is just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben, again, 30 seconds. One thing capability development institutions should either start doing or stop doing. One thing.
Okay, the institutions, like the case from where things we're learning from, they have to be strong. They have to be, have a system of self-regulation, because sometimes politicians could be funny by protecting their interests. And then inconsistency in policy also affects continuity in progress. So if you have strong institutions that are self-regulatory, it helps a lot to sustain the momentum of growth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And one closing question, same question to everybody on the panel here. What is the single most important thing Namibia should get right over the next 2 years if today's petroleum opportunity is to become lasting Namibian capability? Lasting through the sector and beyond the sector. And who wants to take that first? You want to start with that, Ben? And again, 30 seconds.
Okay. I think I can.
What is the single most important thing Namibia should get right over the next 2 years if today's petroleum opportunity is to become lasting Namibian capability?
Okay, what I will say in final talk is that Namibia should not forget other sectors because they have found oil. It's a huge, huge challenge that they are going to face now. They'll be putting too much attention on oil, leaving other sectors. It's a danger sign. They shouldn't do that route.
Thank you. Adelson?
Simple training. I think in 2 years from now, Namibia needs to look back and see where they were before, where they are today, and where they will be. I think with training, they will be very far away.
Oyster? Thank you.
Okay. I see people here from Libya, Ghana, Nigeria, Angola, and these were all companies that were local companies there, and they have now gone international. They're now coming here to work. What I would say is one day I want to go to a conference in Egypt and see Namibians there advertising their companies. That would be my measure of success.
Thank you. Niall?
What I'd like to see is the trainees and the people that we bring in to our first development coming back in 10 years' time and actually seeing them lead the next development and the next development after that. That's what we want to see, sustainable future.
Thank you. Randy?
Well, I think basically they should ensure that they consistently build the capacity, the service providers in the next 2 years so that it can be sustainable as long as they have the oil and gas operations.
Francesco?
I believe Namibia should do what she is doing presently. We can see here a great collaboration among authorities, and the authorities are ready to learn and listen. So they need to continue in that path, this collaboration.
Thank you very much. Thanks to my panel. I see time is up.
Thank you so much. Tony, it seems you clearly enjoyed this panel discussion. Thank you so much. Let's give him a round of applause for insightful one. And just quickly and briefly from the audience, just 2 questions from the audience to our panel. Here we have the 2. Can I give the gentleman a chance, and then we can have the 2 of you just to the mic quickly, and then just pose your questions to our panelists. Yes, please go ahead. And then you can just follow through here.
Hi everyone, my name is Edward Shati. I'm a founder of Anylogic, a Namibian company that provides intelligence. Okay, I have a question to Adelson and Master Niall. Okay, when you talk about, because you say that local companies should meet certain standards for them to be accepted, but now the oil and gas industry is an industry for the big boys. You need to have billions. And then now, when it comes to capacity, Namibia's companies don't have that capacity. How, as an operator or a contractor, how are you willing to help these emerging baby companies to actually, stand up and also one day be comparable to you? That's a question that I have.
Can I start?
I can. Yeah, sure. I think my message or my way, what we've done how we've done this in the past from McDermott is to provide you the opportunity to use your skill set. We need to provide the correct package of work for you. So we need to understand what your capabilities are and understand what's too much. You know, there's a balance between what you can do and what you could take on, and then what the outcome would be. So it's really important that we don't compromise you as a company, that you don't overreach, that you stick within what you're capable of doing with yourself or with a partner. So that's what's fundamentally important, is to understand the package. We have an obligation to not ask for too much, but to split things up in a way that more people can have a future in this industry.
Okay, let me see if I understood the question. I think you want to know how to do to become a successful local company. Am I right? Because the line, I couldn't hear very well. So I just heard my name.
Rita, what kind of support can you give to local infant companies?
Okay, thank you very much. In order to save time, I will ask you to come to our booth so we have a conversation, very straightforward, and it will be very good, believe me, so you need to come. Thank you.
Hello, thank you very much. My name is Martin van Onna. I'm the founder and CEO of Stroom. We developed composite flexible pipes for ultra-deep water, oil and gas production and gas injection. So my question is around how to marry or how to combine innovation or disruptive innovation with local content. And I'd like to ask Neil and Oise for advice. Our company is a tier 2 level company, about 250 people from Europe. High-end aerospace technology brought from aerospace down to subsea. So as Mr. here also said, a lot of proprietary technology developed. We are an enabler maybe for ultra-deep, and we're offering on Venus at this moment. So what would be your advice for a company like ourselves, bringing innovative new products to the global ultra-deep industry, and what should we do as a small OEM to create or help local content? Would it be knowledge transfers to industry, to universities, or should it be something else? What would be your advice for me? Thank you very much.
I think I'll start off with two-pronged. One, in terms of fabrication, it wouldn't make sense to you now, but if you did an analysis of what it is your solution is, and looking at other industries to figure out what inside of what you bring to the table can be manufactured here. For instance, we had a paint, we have to paint our FPSOs every number of years for corrosion protection. And no company was willing to go set up in, I'm not going to mention which country, in a country. But what we found was that for civil, they were willing to set up a blending facility or a mixing facility. Now, it doesn't produce paint, but what it does is it helps another industry with setting up a part of the solution. So if you did that analysis with your solution, you'd be able to find where you could bring value to Namibia. Second would be in training. Now, I understand your technology is proprietary, and as someone else had mentioned, You're not going to just put it on a silver plate and hand it to a local vendor. But working here rather than there is part of the solution. And in answering why do that, it's because companies like ours would be awarding contracts to you if we have a local story content, a local content story to tell. So if we're able to show the Shells, Totals of this world that we're creating local content in Namibia, that then lends to you coming in to do things in the country.
Thanks. So I can add to that. So obviously I'm familiar with your technology. What I would suggest in terms of opportunities is what can you, like there's parts of your technology, parts of your construction that you can physically do in country, terminations and fittings. There's also scope in country that will be required later on in terms of installability, in terms of people on the vessel that will understand your processes, understand your product. You know, they could be trained, they could be locals that are brought to your facility, trained, brought back. So you have the skill set, you know, where you can use some of those people here to maybe either do some end terminations or spooling or transferring or in terms of logistics. So there's certain aspects, you know, what you have in terms of proprietary is yours, but there are certain add-ons that you can look to bring to that. And I think that's really the key in terms of OEMs, you know, look to see what they can let go, what they can allow places like Namibia to be able to contribute and learn and grow. And maybe in the future you could have a fabrication site here. With the water depths that we have, your technology's going to be very important, an enabler. So, you know, it's not out of the question that shouldn't be something that is considered down the track.
And I can give you a couple of examples that work in different places, but I'll give you one, because it's close to yours. Is the military procurement. Military, as you know, is high technology, very proprietary. How do countries like Saudi Arabia, who spend a lot of their budget acquiring military technology, get capacity built locally? Is there something called offsets? In other words, a challenging supplier to bring a part of their supply chain in country and let that supply chain add value in that country. They can do work on that project or other projects at different parts of the world. And we've done that with engineering in Trinidad and Tobago myself. So it's something you can look at. Look at your supply chain and see which is appropriate to relocate in the market you're working on. And if the local content policy in Namibia considers offsets, that can be of value.
Absolutely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's give them one final round of applause to thank them for an insightful panel discussion and presentations that we saw earlier. Thank you so much, Tony. Quickly, just so while you have your seat, let me just invite Mr. Jackson Nangolo, Senior Energy Investment Analyst at the NIPDB, to just appreciate you for the great, of course, insightful information that you've provided with us this afternoon. Thank you so much. Please join me on stage, as well as the tokens of appreciation that we are handing over to you. And our photographer, just thank you quickly. Just let's move quickly and have one picture and move to the next panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, and while we are at that, it's also just quite equally important to thank our bronze sponsors, who are, of course, our partners for this year's event. Geo Energy, we'd like to thank Logistics Support Services, Northern Ocean, Tenorus, Yinson Production. We'd also like to thank the Development Bank of Southern Africa for being on board as a bronze partner. And our international partners, would like to thank the African Local Content Association. We'd like to thank ACLM. We'd also like to thank Koga Nam, OSH Association, NAMPOA, Patton, SAOGA, the Southern African Oil and Gas Alliance, as well as Solutions People Energy, and lastly, that is TSAVO, I must have pronounced that wrongly, TAVO, if that's the correct pronunciation or pronunciation. Please, thank you so much for being a partner on this year's conference. We are now going to be heading into the next panel discussion. And thank you so much once again to Mr. Nangolo. I think we just need one last group picture with the entire panelists, and then we can move over to the next important discussion. Thank you so much. Swiftly, we move to the next discussion, ladies and gentlemen, and this will be our final local content conversation for the local content masterclass this afternoon. Our focus now shifts to local content leadership, setting out Namibia's framework for success. The discussion will look at the gap between policy and implementation, developing competitive local supply chains, and building meaningful partnerships between international operators as well as Namibian companies. And to lead this important discussion will be Mr. Mpumelelo Mpofu, the director at Ubuntu Betu Compassion Capital Incorporated. He is the founder and non-executive chair of Ubuntu Betu Compassion Capital Limited, a community condition rating house. He also works at the intersection of governance, investment, human systems, and institutional decision-making, and will moderate this session, of course, on the principles that should guide the Namibia's local content practice. I think I'd just like to quickly get your attention, ladies and gentlemen. Can we just settle in? Let's just settle in and quickly have some order as we welcome Mr. Mpofu to introduce the next panel discussion. Please, let's give Mr. Mpofu a round of applause for the final discussion for today.
Yeah, I'll ask you guys. Yeah, great. Good afternoon, everyone. And let me ask my panelists to come up and join me, please. Could you guys come and join me here? If we can settle down and get started, as the MC has said, I stand on the same confirmations that have been done. As has been said, my name is Mpumelelo Mpofu, and Ubuntu Betu Compassion. Ubuntu Betu Compassion Capital is a community confidence rating house, and I am its founder and non-executive chair. We are trying to compress 5 great speakers into 75 minutes, if you can bear with us. So I apologize for those of you whose attention is still caught outside. This morning, please take a seat, guys. Yeah, please do take a seat. This morning we heard about a great deal about what Namibia must put in place, the laws, institutions, capability, financing, transparency, and implementation. Our task this afternoon, following on Tony Paul and his panelists, is slightly different. we are asking what principles should guide local content practice so that these elements work together. We will take that question in the form of a relay, from understanding through the legal terrain and governance to participation and implementation. And to show you how solid we are, ours is the first presenters group that is made up of ladies and one man. So Shafi Mani is the token male for a panel of ladies. So I'm asking you to hear this not as 5 separate presentations, but as a relay moving across the terrain that I have mentioned. Our question is a practical one. What principles should guide local content practice in Namibia? And each one of the panelists has about 8 to 10 minutes. And then I will pick up as we go one burning question, if necessary, but also that I have handed out this type of card so that if you have a question while one is speaking, just raise your hand. One set of cards is over there, another set of cards is over there. Write your question, we'll gather those and hand them out, and we'll try and answer as many of those questions as we possibly can in the room. We won't answer all of them, but I assure you, out of respect, we will make sure we get a response to you. So within that whole context, and this is my first act of governance in timekeeping, I'd like to introduce our first contributor, Mutindi Lydia Jacobs. Mutindi is a legal strategist in Namibia's Directorate of Law Reform, Policy and Legislation. But what I particularly like about her, when I met her and spoke with her, is the notion of being a sense maker. She made it make sense for me. She takes things that most of us find impenetrable and makes them understandable. And today, we're hearing about cakes and ovens. Could you take us through oil and gas, please?
Good afternoon. Can you please roll my slides? You see, they didn't explain this to me. Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share my perspectives on what local content is. As Mr. Mpofu explained, my name is Mutindi Jacobs, and I like to refer to myself as a sense maker. A sense maker of what? A sense maker of the very complex, jargon-filled oil and gas sector. A sense maker because the generations that are going to benefit from oil and gas are going to be people who don't necessarily have the qualifications, the competencies and skills to understand the jargon with which local content is often described. So my role today is to help you go through the local content policy, understand what is expected from all of the stakeholders involved, and hopefully at the end of the day, I will have convinced you to use better analogies and less expressive, more expressive jargon to explain the local content as if we are explaining it to a 7 and 8-year-old. So I've started a series online called the Energy Explainer, and in this Energy Explainer, I've created a mythical kitchen that really explains what local content is. The reason why I've used the kitchen is because everyone understands what a kitchen is, everyone will have experienced a kitchen in their life, and I thought it was a fitting analogy to explain what local content is and what we are trying to do in this kitchen. So this is just a picture that I used to express the concept. So the analogy that I'm using is that Namibia is a country that's got this beautiful kitchen, and we've got neighbors the oil and gas companies that have entered our kitchen, and they want to use our kitchen to bake a cake. They've got their own oven, and they've got their chefs who are very experienced in cake baking, but they need to use our kitchen, which is our natural resource, the oil and gas. So these neighbors have come into our kitchen, and if we don't insist on local content, they'll basically come into our kitchen, install their oven, use their own products, their own produce. They'll use their own flour, their own eggs, and everything that is required to make this cake, and then they'll leave. We'll have benefited from them having been in the kitchen. We'll have benefited from the smells and the decadent cake. They may leave us a slice or two, but if we do not participate via local content, we won't have gained any skills and competencies by the time they are done with that kitchen. So what is local content? Local content is basically the government rule that says if you're coming into our kitchen, you're going to make use of our flour, you're going to make use of our produce, you're going to make use of the people in the house, and you're going to train them while you're baking this cake, and you're also going to share this recipe so that by the end of your baking session, you'll have left us more knowledgeable, and we'll also then know how to bake our own cake going forward. So that's the analogy that's really at the center of what it is that I'm going to be explaining today. And it really emphasizes the skills transfer, which is making sure that the recipe remains in the kitchen that belongs to us. And it's also making sure that the jobs stay local, making sure that the people who are found in this house are empowered with the skills and the competencies that they need to be able to bake this cake. It's very important to know that local content is not an experiment. A lot of people have queried why local content, why we are trying to enforce local content in Namibia. We are saying that local content is not new. It's been practiced before by several countries. We've heard throughout the day about key lessons from Norway, Ghana, Nigeria. We've heard about cautionary tales, what to do, what not to do. We've also learned from Brazil what they did. They were very rigid with their local content, and they legislated to say that you needed to have a 65 to 75% threshold, and we also learned that that is not the way to do it. The more appropriate way when you're enforcing local content is to make sure that you're doing it in a phased approach so that the people in the house have enough time to learn the recipe and to be able to develop those skills and competencies that are required to be able to bake the cake one day. So these are the key lessons we have learned from those countries. I'm not going to go into them because I believe other panelists today have touched on these. Who is in the kitchen? It's very important to identify which stakeholder you belong to. So I'm particularly speaking to the Namibian youth and SMEs, and these are the people who have not been part of this conversation at the level that they need to be. And this is primarily because, as I mentioned before, oil and gas is revered as a very complex industry, capital intensive, and because of the terminology and the jargon, a lot of youth feel intimidated, and they're left out of that conversation. So some of the things that I'm doing with this series, with my Energy Explainer, some of the things that we are doing with the Namibia Youth Energy Forum is to make sure that we are breaking down this information in such a way that the Namibian youth can understand it, they can engage with it, and hopefully then participate in it. So it's important that Namibian youth know that they are the family members in the kitchen, and they are the ones that need to bring the value to this process to be able to bake that cake. Government is the homeowner, so government is the one that sets the regulatory framework within which this cake is going to be baked. Government is the one who decides who is getting trained and controls the pantry, and they are also, of course, the ones who enforce the rules and regulations that they create. We then have our IOCs and our operators, and this is the foreign neighbor that is coming into this kitchen. So from IOCs, we want compliance, of course. We want them to come with a good attitude. We want them to come with the energy of wanting to transfer skills and competencies to our people. And we also expect that they are also going to be expecting that when they come into our kitchen, that the kitchen has the infrastructure and the tools that is required to bake this cake with us. So I'm talking now to the SMEs, to the Namibian youth who often ask, what can I do as a Namibian youth? What can I do as the person in this house? Number one, you can supply the raw materials, which is your flour and your eggs, and this is in terms of some of the things that are required in the industry. So you can be part of the construction, you can provide construction materials, you can provide pipes and valves and fittings, and you can provide the skills that are required in that industry. So your TVET skills. In terms of the kitchen tools, we're looking at your industries such as financial sectors, your insurance sectors, you're looking at your lawyers, your logistics, and making sure that your ports and the infrastructure that is required to make this kitchen run are in place. In terms of the recipe and the expertise, this is often referred to as the hardest one to supply. So we are looking at your engineers, you're looking at your environmental assessment professionals. So you're looking at people who have a specific skill, who need to provide the services that anchor this industry. To the Namibian youth and to the Namibian SMEs, these are some of the barriers that we experience, and these are some of the barriers that they need to overcome to be able to participate in the sector. So, of course, access to finance is one that is always spoken about. Certification gaps, the fact that you need to be certified to provide these services to the industry has also been a real eye-opener to many of us. So, and also the requirements that your business is formalized, that you've got your annual financial systems in place. These are also some barriers that SMEs are struggling with. But as I mentioned, these barriers are not insurmountable. And with the proper training and platforms such as this, as we continue to engage with each other and network with each other, we'll start empowering ourselves with the information that we need to be able to fill those gaps. So some of the things that we like to advise our youth and SMEs is, number one, to get ISO certified. So this is non-negotiable. We also encourage them to register on vendor databases. Of course, this does not guarantee that you're going to get a tender, but it's important to be visible. If Total or Shell does not know about your company or does not know about the services and products that you offer, they cannot engage you. It's also important to encourage our SMEs then to pursue joint ventures deliberately. I've always said collaboration over competition, especially at this juncture where we find ourselves being a frontier nation where we are having to learn a lot of the skills. And a lot of the brothers and sisters from Nigeria and Ghana have expressed their interest and their support and readiness to partner with Namibian local firms. So that one is a very big one. Access to finance early, so there are a lot of banking institutions that are here today, so one would be encouraged then to engage them and to find out about the requirements to get financing from them. As I've mentioned, government owns the kitchen, so some of the things during the consultation processes we've had that government needs to do, and some of the queries and some of the issues that the industry has raised is the lack of fiscal stability. Of course, that's an executive decision, but the fiscal stability would help in getting some of these IOCs to FID. Fast legitimate permitting, it is also encouraged that governments have some sort of a one-stop shop, that, so that they can streamline their processes in terms of permitting, the permitting that is required in exploration activities. Namibia is a country that is well known for its rule of law. Our courts are very competent. So this is the response that we have when the question about being signatories to ICSID and to the New York and the Washington Convention is raised. Namibia is a country that respects the rule of law, and if there are disputes, we do believe that our courts are competent enough to manage those disputes. What the neighbor expects, what the IOC and what the operators and the industry is looking from government, of course, as I mentioned, is a stable fiscal regime. They're looking for fast, legitimate permitting, the rule of law and sanctity of contract. From SMEs, they want SMEs that are ISO certified. They want SMEs that have proper processes in place. They want SMEs who have audited financials and who can really show that they've got the capacity, the financial capacity to provide these services. And then, of course, from the ecosystem, they're looking for quality data and they're looking for functional ports and logistics in terms of infrastructure. My time has run out. I need to close up, but I just want to encourage you to go over to my LinkedIn. I've gone deeper in depth with this, and I'm happy to engage after the panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mtindi. And as we said, we're running behind time, so I had a lot of questions that I have. I suspect there are other questions. If you have questions, please write them on this so we can try and tackle them as part of the panel session. So thank you about introducing us to kitchens and baking. But as with all things, there has to be a lawyer in the house. So let me introduce you to Shafimana, I've got to say this, Shimakelene, who is a partner at SNC Incorporated and previously served in Namibia's Petroleum Affairs Directorate. Importantly for this conversation, he contributed to the early development of Namibia's local content policy. Bring us the necessary discipline, then show the signs on the ground for us to play the game.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Shafimana Shimakeleni. I'm a partner at SNC Incorporated, as introduced. At SNC Incorporated, we are a full-service law firm where we render services to various clients across the value chain of the oil and gas industry. So for purposes of today's presentation, I'm going to give an overview of how Namibia's legal framework creates the seat for Namibians to participate across the full value chain of the oil and gas industry. However, we still have to note that that seat has no value if Namibians do not have the competency, the credibility, the corporate governance structure to partake in the oil and gas industry. So capacity is quite an important requirement. So we note that over the 5 years, Namibia has made quite significant strides in the oil and gas industry. Various discoveries have been made in the oil and gas in the Orange Basin, as well as there are expectations for an FID for the Venus project. And last week, the local content policy was approved. Obviously, there have been drafts that have been circulating, but the intention of the local content policy is for the benefits to reach Namibians across the full value chain of the oil and gas industry, not indirectly only through royalties and taxes. So what I'm going to do now is just give an overview of where the law stands today as it pertains to local content obligations. So in Namibia, there are currently 2 channels through which governments have set local content obligations, that is through legislation and contractual agreements. So the legislation, we have the Petroleum Act as well as the Affirmative Action Act, but the Petroleum Act is more the sector specific. The Affirmative Action Act is quite a national objective. It doesn't per se only apply to the oil and gas industry, but applies across board. So when it comes to the Petroleum Act, Section 14 of the Petroleum Act has specific conditions that speak to local content, which requires companies to employ people who are qualified, requires companies to also procure services and goods from Namibians who are able to provide those services at comparable prices. And in addition, it requires companies to initiate training programs, cooperate to develop local skills and technology, and contribute to the Petroleum Training Fund. So what the Petroleum Agreement does, the Petroleum Agreement is now an agreement that is negotiated between the government before a license is issued, which is also binding and provides enforceable local content provisions. That specific Petroleum Agreement reinforces the conditions of the local content aspects that are provided in Section 14, but goes further in Clause 22 to specify that this annual contribution that is made to Petrofund, it has to be divided. 70% is paid to Petrofund, and then the 30% is kept by the company for in-house training. So in the Petroleum Agreement, there is a specific annexure that governs the principles on how this in-house training is to be governed. So you will see that, you will know that one of the aspects will be that they will prioritize which fields, or they will identify which fields in the sector needs priority. In addition, you have Clause 23 as well, which gives a specific requirement on procurement of services and goods from Namibians. And then you have Annexure 4 of the Petroleum Agreement, which requires a company to submit a local procurement statement. So this local procurement statement is to be submitted at the end of each year within 60 days to the minister. So in this local procurement statement, a company must specify the goods that have been produced and manufactured in Namibia, as well as specify the goods and services that are procured from Namibians, and lastly must specify how the company has adopted a methodology to identify which services are procured from Namibian service providers. So this gives government an opportunity to be involved in that process of ensuring that Namibian goods and services are procured. So the Affirmative Action Act, as I've indicated, not sector specific. It requires employers to give preferential treatment to racially disadvantaged persons, women, persons with disability. So in the event that there is non-compliance with the Affirmative Action Act, you will be summoned by the Ministry of Justice and Labor, to explain why there is non-compliance. So there is a legal effect to the affirmative action. So the National Upstream Local Content Policy, my colleague has identified what the policy intends to achieve, so I'm not going to spend much time on this. So we've highlighted that there's a policy and there's a specific law. Let me just get some water, I'm a bit thirsty. So we have the policy that is a statement of intent and direction. It sets priorities, it sets principles and targets, and it's a guiding national document. It's not binding per se. So the local content policy that has been adopted is not a binding document. On the other hand, we have the law that is binding. The provisions that I've highlighted, the specific clauses in the petroleum agreement, those are binding provisions. Why is this distinction important? The distinction is quite important because it matters to manage expectations. So if you consider, for example, in the local content policy, there's a definition of local company. Local company requires the company to be owned 51% by Namibians. That is a requirement, but it is not practical at this stage to have a local company, to require every entity that partakes in the oil and gas industry to have a 51%. So that is not something that's possible today, but it might be implementable at a later stage. That's what government is trying to achieve. So that's the difference. So to manage expectations. So it is important. It might look like it's a basic distinction, but it highlights or it really manages the expectations of what people read. Once they see that there's this policy, there's this law. Moving on to the next, what needs to happen next? So now that we have highlighted that there's a policy, there's law, there might be certain aspects that need to be fast-tracked to ensure that, based on a comparison with other jurisdictions, how we can fast-track the participation of local businesses in the industry. So one of the aspects that we need to consider is that the lawmaking process in Namibia is quite a protracted, it's quite long. So, however, the Petroleum Act allows the minister to make regulations. These regulations are also binding. So through the regulations, through the powers that the minister has, the minister can introduce regulations which introduces a dedicated monitoring body, provides specific penalties and corrective action plans in the event that local content provisions are not complied with. And we decriminalize the non-compliance with the local content provisions because for purposes of the current legal framework, there are no fines issued. The only sanctions you have is that you might be investigated and the matter might be referred for prosecution. But if you introduce fines and so forth, those are aspects that allow parties to issue fines and avoid that long process and drain police resources. So the opportunities are there for Namibians to participate in the oil and gas industry. Part of the research, obviously, we are just being considerate of time. Part of the research shows that most of the opportunities are in the procurement of goods and services. Obviously, when it comes to employment, yes, but you require specialist training. For example, I'm a beneficiary of the Petrofund scheme. I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship in 2019 to study at the University of Aberdeen. But those are opportunities that are not always there. But the procurement of goods and services, considering that most companies spend much of their expenditure on procuring goods and services, that's where Namibians can benefit.
We're down to time now.
Okay, apologies. So on the last slide, we have noted that, and I saw that Mutundi highlighted the 6 steps that companies should consider, or SMEs should consider to partake in the oil and gas industry. But I've realized that one aspect that most companies always miss is ensuring that the basic documents are in place. For example, if I'm instructed to conduct a due diligence, one of the first things I check is, are your company records up to date? I have to assess the beneficial ownership. I have to assess, is there any risk of fronting? Is any of the amounts that you receive through alternative means? So I have to assess that. But most of the time, documents are never ready, and that's where most of the companies fail. They don't even make it to the next step. So I would recommend that most SMEs consider getting your company records up to date to ensure that you are able to partake in the value chain of the oil and gas industry. Local content is only as strong as Namibians' position to claim it. Thank you very much.
While I've got you there before you leave, I just have one question, and please answer it in 30 seconds. Earlier we heard about fronting, renting, and elite capture, which you've just referred to.
Yes, yes.
How do we prevent that? You've mentioned that people should get their paperwork up to date, but if they're going to rent and front and so forth, how do we prevent that from happening? How do we authenticate that stuff?
Yeah, so one of the primary ways to prevent that is to introduce regulations where you penalize or you criminalize aspects relating to fronting. So fronting is a real issue, especially when you conduct due diligence. You find a lot of people being in specific companies on behalf of other people. So one of the most primary ways is to introduce, through the regulations, penalty mechanisms as well as sanctions on both the company as well as the company that is being used to front. So that is just one of the aspects that we can consider.
We'll pick that up in the discussion. Thank you again.
Thank you.
So now we have the opportunity, and we're now playing the field, but the rules and aspirations do not implement themselves. Somebody has to turn them into disciplined delivery, and that takes us to program governance. I'd like to introduce Maseida Tupi Zo as our third contributor to our relay, who's the founder and chief executive of Transformed Vision. For more than 2 decades, her work has concentrated on program governance in complex and highly regulated environments. Her proposition is wonderfully direct, and when I saw it in our discussion, I was blown away. Governance must have a seat at the table because transparency gives leaders visibility, accountability, and the ability to act before problems become outcomes. Take us down.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to speed talk because we've been told to speed this up. Hello, everyone. It is a pleasure to be a part of this session today. I would like to start by thanking the conference organizer committee for creating space for program governance, the non-technical component, yet critical to bringing all of the technical components together successfully. But program governance matters. It is often the quiet discipline that determines whether major national opportunities become lasting national value. Namibia is now standing at a critical place of its energy journey. Therefore, governance must have a seat at every single table in a room. And not only a seat, but governance must be the first one to be seated at the table. Because when a nation starts to move from decision to dividend, the questions now becomes, who exactly is looking over all of those commitments that are being made? Who's identifying and tracking the issues and the risk and coming up with mitigation plans for resolution? Who's ensuring the leaders have true transparency into their initiatives so that problems do not become expensive or become a domino effect, and who is protecting the legacy of the nation and the leaders? So these are all critical questions that will be asked, plus many more. So a transformed vision, we say, leaders, please understand or take your time to understand what the true program governance component consists of. Lock forces with an independent oversight team to ensure that your work, your plans, your intentions, and your legacy, they are being protected. At Transformed Vision, we have been intentional about nourishing our program management service, and we have come up with our tailored framework called PMOS, and that stands for Program Management Outsourcing Services. This is our governance oversight framework that is meant to work alongside leaders to help them to have true transparency into their initiatives from layers above, irrespective of their leadership role. the industry, the sector, but we chose the leaders because they are the ones that are easily blindsided throughout the execution of initiatives, because they do work from layers above. So we work with them to understand, to help them to understand what the program governance consists of, the component consists of. We help them to understand the importance of separating the two primary components of the program management world, and that's the execution of your program, projects, initiative. We'll use this interchangeably just for this conversation, and the execution of your governance activities. So these are just some of the governance activities that I have over here, 12, I think, and there are many more, but each one of these must be handled with care and executed by an expert, and every single one of these activities must be executed for each one of your initiative. And why is that? Because the program governance is the backbone to your initiative. So over time, of course, leaders tend to put more focus into the execution of the programs. Understandably, there's a lot of emotions in that end where the end users are excited, frustrated, whatever it is, but there's a lot of emotions in that end. But with the leaders, they tend to, when they bring the program management, they have to be able to bring in each one of these initiatives with those leaders. So what the Transform Vision has done, we've taken these governance activities and we have stood them up like a module of its own, and we've aligned experts with years of experience, certified experts to execute on each one of these activities. So we have asked that leaders allowed, when they come in, first of all, we work with them and we bring in our own industry experts. Because in order to give the leaders comfort in what we are delivering to them is actual and factual, we'll bring our industry experts, our subject matter experts for the topic, and our portfolio subject matter experts. So Tony Paul is here, he's one of our portfolio subject matter experts. So each one of these, they're aligned to this, and they can now work with the team to execute these projects and push it through the timeline. So they bring in the transparency to the industry, because of course transparency is aligned to governance very strongly. There has to be transparency. And all of these governance experts, they hold a universal skill. So we work with them, we'll push it through the timeline, and now we can, if you look over here, we have local content workforce development. So we ensure that everyone needs to have project schedules, and not only that, but we need to have master project schedules so that we can identify all the dependencies between the projects and go across to each of the portfolios and identify them. So now when we push it through the pipeline, we can upload the results to our leadership dashboard so leaders can have real-time transparency to all of their initiatives. So what the PMOS is saying, allow your experts, your project experts to focus on executing their critical projects and only support the governance experts in executing their project. So there are various executions, so we look at the communication experts. Allow your communication experts to produce communication plans inclusive of every single stakeholder who needs to be communicated with. That plan has to explain why those stakeholders need to be communicated with, at which phase do they need to be communicated, what do they bring to the table, how do they cross-communicate with each other, and also that plan must include your systems, all of the systems that's going to be impacted internally, externally. Bring all of those owners of those systems together to understand the true impacts and work together and understand a time of release so they can release accordingly at the same time. Allow your document experts to produce critical documents such as SOP, standard operating procedures, and let them produce it in a realistic fashion that it meets the capabilities of your organization. So when it is implemented and it's executed in a realistic fashion. And no one person should hold to hold all of the knowledge to a particular task in your organization, because some of that task or the knowledge has been learned under your watch under your finances, and when it's time to part ways, it makes it very difficult because one person retains all of that. Your risk manager, allow your risk managers to stand from the outside. Although you're experts that do understand most of the risks that they're faced with, but from the outside, sometimes the picture is more clearer. So allow them to work with them. Not only that, to pull the appropriate stakeholders together to develop your mitigation plans to ensure that you're going to mitigate on all risks and all issues, and that you're going to close and then continue just developing more risk and executing on those. So I'm trying to speak to. So let's. So yes, I have been. Okay, so as you can see, I've only spoken about 3 out of the 12 that I have over here. This is a program of its own, program governance. You must separate this from your team and make this an independent task. So don't let governance sit at the edge of the conversation. Let it sit in front and center. And what is happening here in Namibia in regards to governance is not only for Namibia, but it contributes to how Africa governs its energy sector. So I thank you.
Sure.
Was that fast?
Thank you very much, Tutu. As we move from governance, let's go to participation, and I'd like to invite Ndapewa Angula, who's the acting executive at NIPD for investment and the senior manager for investment enablement and local participation. And she sits at that intersection between investment coming into Namibia and Namibians seeking meaningful participation in the opportunity. So, Ndapewa, how do we move from opportunity to actual entry?
Thank you very much for that question. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It has been a long day, hasn't it? Yeah. It's almost over, and before we started this session, I smelled some Namibian meat or beef. So please bear with us. You will be treated to some Namibian cuisine soon. My name is Ndapewa Hangula, and I'm here to really make a contribution from my employer, who is the Namibia Investment Promotion and Development Board, and really share our views or contributions on how we view local participation, or what local participation means for the NIPDB. But I also want to start off, I don't have a presentation, so you will have to bear with me. I would want to first link our conversation to the theme of this event, which is from decision to dividend, making Namibia's oil work for Namibians. So specifically for the NIPDB, this means that we are assisting and supporting the country to building a competitive domestic economy around the sector by developing local suppliers, attracting value-adding industries, creating skilled employment, and strengthening local enterprise participation across the entire oil and gas value chain. This is about leveraging oil and gas as a catalyst for industrialization, technology transfer, infrastructure development, and economic diversification. So what this means in practice is that the NIPDB has identified and implemented a number of programs and initiatives that are really looking at building or assisting Namibians to build their local projects. And this is really to present to potential partners or investors, and of course to assist Namibians in how they can ready themselves to become local partners, and as well as those that have businesses or have started business to become local suppliers or service providers to the sector, and of course to ensure that we have the skills that are required by the industry or by the sector. This has been divided in various forms, and we have looked at, when we're looking at investments coming into Namibia, what happens and how do we then bring the local, Namibian locals here. So when I joined NIPDB, my job was actually to put together a program for local participation. The title I had was quite long. It's still there, but there's local participation in it. And this really meant on how do we support Namibians who want to participate in the sector, who have come up with innovative projects that they want to implement but do not have the capacity, they do not have the funding, and of course the technical know-how on how to do this. So we have started putting together projects for potential investment, specifically in this sector, and we've been building this local projects database over the years. We have also spread our engagement not only from Windhoek, where you are now, but really to look at the country and see how the investments can be spread throughout our 14 regions. Now, over the years, we have come to understand that when investments are coming into Namibia, they're usually focused in Commerce region, which is where the capital is, or Erongo region, where the mines are, and now Karas region because of the oil and gas sector that is emerging. But we have 14 regions, and all 14 regions should be taken care of. So we started engaging the regions to understand what capacity do they have, what are the strengths of the region, and how do we then link them up to this particular sector. And this involved us to work with traditional authorities, who are of course the custodians of our local communities. We have engaged government regional structures such as the regional councils, the local authorities, because these are the custodians of economic development and of course urban development in those locales. We have also initiated projects such as the regional investment committees, whose core mandate is really to identify the strengths of that region and come up with investment projects that we as the NIPDB can then promote and bring to potential investors. We have also had various engagements with the youth and youth-led businesses through what we call Ohungi. Ohungi is really your fireside conversations, because traditionally that's really how you engage the youth in the olden days. And those initiatives has enabled us to understand how do we support the youth that are in the regions, because we don't want everybody flocking to Commerce, we don't want everybody flocking to Erongo, where Wolfish Bay is, we don't want everybody flocking to Karas region, where Luderitz is. And therefore, we needed to also then make them understand that you don't have to move away from Zambezi to participate in this region. You can support it through agricultural projects. You can support it through textile development projects, which are projects that are led by the regional governors. And therefore, we have tried to really create linkages between regions and the sector. And it is quite a big task, if I must say. But the aim is really to ensure that we have an inclusive participation or local participation throughout the country. These, ladies and gentlemen, sounds like fluff in the air, but for the communities that are on the ground that want to move away from traditional mahangu farming to potentially producing crops, cash crops that can be availed to the various service providers and of course to markets, how do we then ensure that they understand what this means for them? We have also contributed to the local content policy that Shafimana here has mentioned before. And for us, it's really just to ensure that when we're talking about local content, we understand what it means, we understand what government's ambition is, and therefore we can relay the same information to the communities, to our local business owners, to our, even to our corporates. Because we do work with all when we say private sector Namibian, we mean both MSMEs and corporate Namibia. We have thus also created relationships or strategic partnerships with the likes of the NAMPOA, which is the Oil Operators Association. We have teamed up with Petrofund. We have also, of course, engaged institutions such as the EAN, which is hosting this event, just to ensure that we bring as many Namibians as possible into this conversation, using the relationships that we have and also leveraging from the strength that the country has to offer. And these include the international operators who are coming into the country because they have done this before, they understand the sector, and we need to also ensure that we understand it so that we support our Namibians better. When I first attended this event a few years ago, I remember one of the gentlemen sitting up on the stage mentioned that this sector is highly regulated, it has high standards, and they are not going to change for Namibia. So we need to ensure that we understand these standards and we understand how we can participate in this sector. And that is our role as the NIPDB to ensure that we do prepare our Namibians for those particular standards and how they can participate. Now, specifically to our smaller businesses, this is a sector that we have really tried to capacitate, and we have implemented various initiatives and programs that are aimed at ensuring that we provide guidance and support as necessary. We have implemented initiatives such as the supplier development programs with various operators and of course stakeholders that I've mentioned before. We have also implemented programs that are supporting the path to certification for our local businesses, for them to understand that if you are to be certified to operate in this sector, what does it mean? How do you start? Where do you start? Who do you need to engage? And so forth. We have also incubated what we call a supplier database. And supplier database really required us to, as I've mentioned earlier, go out into the regions and of course also within the urban centers to understand who are the businesses that are currently providing services in Namibia, what capacities do they have, how do we help them transition from their current sectors, from their current operations to of course participating in this sector that we are focusing on today. So that is a database that is active, it is live, we have introduced it. We are working with, oh my goodness, is it time? Okay, sorry for that. I'm usually good with time, but not today. And yeah, just to wrap up, we have also, now that the policy has been finally approved, we are preparing, or we have been preparing on sharing this information within our regions, within our various towns and communities on what this means for the guy on the ground and how this young person who just graduated or who is about to matriculate, what they can potentially do to participate in the sector. On the one hand, we don't operate in isolation. We work with other developmental institutions or organizations. We have supported, as I've mentioned, NAMPOA with really just sharing the baseline study that was conducted a few years ago, which looked at what are the capacities that Namibia have in terms of potential support to the sector and what are those gaps. And I'm quite happy to share that there is a second round coming to improve on what was done, because there has been a number of programs implemented by the various stakeholders to support Namibian businesses, to support Namibian skills. There is a case study here on somebody who was trained and is now a qualified lawyer in this sector. And this just means that perhaps the gap has reduced, maybe not as much, but we have done some work and there has been some traction. And this project will help us to better understand what do we as government need to do, what do we as private sector need to do to ensure that we are ready to participate. And we are ready to participate, if I can say so myself. Lastly, I would want to share that a few months ago, we launched what is called the Energy Sector Skills Strategy for Namibia, which was a project supported by the International Labour Organization and of course supported by the United Nations. And it is to help Namibia, or specifically NIPDB, because we have a department called Talent, Innovation and Productivity that is focused at understanding what the demand for skills is for the various sectors, and also what we as Namibia have. But this department doesn't only focus on oil and gas, but for the sake of today's conversation, I will share with you that this energy sector skills strategy is available. You can download it from our website. And there's so many things I can share with you today. Apart from the hills I'm standing in, which are starting to hurt now, I was reminded that my time is up. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Dapewa. Dapewa talked us through participation. Let me invite Louise Angura to come and take us through what implementation looks like. And that'll be our final presentation for today. Sure.
Okay, how many minutes do I have before I start?
We have the same 8.
Looking at the time now.
I've been given a hard stop, so.
Okay, a hard stop of 5:15, and it's 5 minutes. So I'll try to rush what I have to say in the 10 minutes. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Why are we sleeping? Okay, my name is Louise Hangero. I am a petroleum inspector, and I'm also responsible for local content development with the Office of the President. I'm with the upstream petroleum unit, actually. So I'll just give you a brief outline of what local content implementation or successful local content implementation should look like, or how we perceive or how we want it to look like as government. So from the regulatory perspective, I would say successful local content implementation is when the policy is visible in actual economic activity in the country. Not when the government is receiving reports. That's necessary because that helps us to track compliance, but it's when we can see the evidence of policy in the day-to-day economic activities of the country. But on the ground, what do we want to see as government? We want to see Namibians winning meaningful contracts. We want to see Namibian occupying skilled and technical roles within the oil and gas industry. We also want to see local businesses progressively moving into the sophisticated area of the value chain. We don't want to just remain in catering, transportation. We want to go into those areas that we believe we do not have the technical skills right now. So that's what we see, or that's what we want to see as a country. And we also expect to see evidence of knowledge, skills, and technology transfer. We don't just want to see Namibians employed by the industry players. We also want to see the industry preparing Namibians to be able to take over at some point. So we want to see the evidence of skills and knowledge transfer. And also from the regulator's perspective, this means having measurable targets. This means having credible local content plans, and also proper monitoring and verification processes of mechanisms. That's very, very critical. But ultimately, successful local content from the government's perspective is when we have more value remaining in a country. It's when we have capacity and capabilities of the Namibians built for them to be able to take over the industry at some point. We know it's a long-term agenda. It takes time. It's not a one-day thing, but that's what we see as successful local content. Successful local content, in a nutshell, is when we move, as a country, when we move from local participation to local capability. So that's how we perceive, or that's the agenda we are trying to drive as government. And there's a mistake, or there are a lot of mistakes that have been made elsewhere in other oil and gas jurisdictions that we do not want, or that we cannot afford to see happening in Namibia. And this is looking at local content as percentage compliance exercise, or as a tick-the-box exercise. We want to see local content being dealt or being looked at as a long-term development strategy for the country. Of course, percentage would help us to track compliance, but really, knowing knowing how many Namibians were employed, how many contracts were issued to the Namibians, that alone, we think that will help Namibia achieve its local content objectives. It can help, but not necessarily. So that will help us, of course, to achieve compliance on paper, but it will not necessarily build that lasting actual capability that we want to see or that will develop Namibia. So from the regulatory framework, we are trying to make sure that as government we have clear, measurable, and enforceable legal frameworks, but that we are also drafting these frameworks or legal frameworks in a manner that they are commercially realistic. We understand what we are capable of as a country now. We know what we cannot do as a country now. So that's why we need to identify as a country where or what capabilities do we have already now that can already ensure that Namibians starts participating at this point? And where are the genuine gaps that we need to work or that we need to improve? And where the industry can realistically develop capabilities, and also realizing that this can happen, this must or can only happen over time, not once off. And my friend here, Rodriguez, always reminds me that local content must be a phased approach. It can never be a one-day thing. So we are cognizant of that, and as government, that's how we are approaching this whole local content subject. So the focus is really long-term capabilities. And a lot of questions also we've been getting from the public is whose responsibility is it to achieve the objectives of local content? And in my view, it's a shared responsibility, but each and every party has different responsibilities towards this. Of course, government is required to provide clear legal frameworks, to provide that clarity, that predictability, to have appropriate requirements for local content and to ensure that this is enforced. There are monitoring mechanisms in place that's required from government. And also to facilitate that broader ecosystem of ensuring that the skills transfer from our operators to the Namibians and that our local content companies are being engaged on a regular basis. It's a responsibility of government to facilitate that as well. But the operators, it is the responsibility of the operator to ensure that they provide these opportunities to the local companies to participate and that they have visibility, that their procurement plans are communicated, if they have tenders or contracts, they are advertised publicly, Namibians are aware, and also it's the responsibility of the operators to capacitate our local suppliers. We know that your requirements are a bit strict, but you need, or we want you also to assist the government, ensure that you bring the Namibian or the local companies to par. So this is supporting supplier development, ensuring that, and also you are not only required to submit local content plans, but to ensure that the local content commitments that you have actually submitted are realized. So that's the responsibility of the local, of the operators. But Namibian businesses, you also have a responsibility towards this local content policy. Local content does not mean that being a Namibian, you must be given tenders or the contracts must be awarded to you. You have to meet the requirements of the industry. It's your responsibility to capacitate yourself, to get certified, to just to ensure that you are competitive. Of course, the government has an opportunity towards ensuring that local companies are capacitated, that they are meeting the standards. It's our responsibility as government to see how best we can assist or how best we can help the local companies navigate that space. But businesses must invest also in building their own capacity, in meeting international standards, being competitive, and also, because of course as a country, we are new to the industry. We want you to participate, but we are not saying you must participate regardless of you having qualifications or standards or whatsoever. So you need to ensure that you do this yourself so that you can improve your timelines, you work on your quality, that you can deliver, your cost becomes competitive and all that. So I would describe the relationship as government should create the framework, the operators must create their opportunities, and the Namibian businesses needs to build their own capabilities so that they can take advantage of the opportunities that are being created. But all in all, because if one of these three is missing, if there are no clear frameworks or the operators are not providing the opportunities or there's no visibility of those opportunities and our local companies are not capacitated to provide their services, then there's no local content. So we need all three to move together. Of course, fronting was mentioned. Okay, we are out of time, so I'll not get there, I'll not go to that. So I think with that, then I need to end my presentation here.
I'm so
Thank
sorry,
you so
Louise.
much.
Thank you very much for that, and thank you. Sorry for raining on your parade. John, over to you.
Thank you. Our last panel discussion for the day. A bigger round of applause, please, to Mr. Mpofu and the entire panel of experts. Thank you so much. Mr. Jackson, just swiftly, I would like to invite you once again to, of course, just appreciate our moderator as well as a panel of experts, followed by a group photo, and then we can just round up with some final announcements, and then we move to the next item. I'd just like to ask in the meantime that we all just remain seated, kindly please. There's very important announcements coming afterwards. Just quickly and briefly, we will not take much of your time. Perfect, even better. All right, thank you so much. I think it's just important that while the panel of experts just take their pictures, that I just relay the announcements to you, dear delegates. What we are having tonight is a cocktail reception by the pool, the side of the Movenpick Hotel that is sponsored by Hanwha Ocean. But first of all, the marching orders to that venue is that we exit the hall through the two doors at the back. Paul, can I just have you give us a signal? Okay, yeah, a signal over there. Those are the two doors that we'll be using. We'll be entering the exhibition hall where we'll be collecting drinks that are served to us by Hanwha Ocean, and then we move over to, that is Movenpick Hotel at the poolside area where a cocktail reception is prepared for us, especially, importantly also, a very insightful, rather exciting performance by Esme Songbird. Lots of food also prepared for us, and please, let's just make sure that we follow those marching orders through the back, get the drink, and over to Movenpick Hotel. And with that said, I think it's just fair to thank each and every one of you. Tomorrow we continue with the official opening of the executive and technical delegates that will be done here, the official opening of the 2026 Namibia Local Conference that is going to be taking place here. Please, we are reminded that we need to be seated in this very venue at least 8, not at least, please, let's be seated in this very hall at 8:30 so that we can, of course, get started with the event as early as possible. Our Vice President of the Republic of Namibia will be representing Her Excellency the President, Dr. Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah, to officially open the 2026 Namibia Oil and Gas Conference and Exhibition. Thank you so much. Of course, after the pictures, we can then move, of course, in an orderly fashion and manner as we conclude. Thank you so much. My name is Johnny Konja.
Sorry, these guys are saying they're available for student networking to answer questions because we didn't give them a chance to do that.
Absolutely, very important. Yes, the networking continues. The panel that was just here on this discussion are very much available for more networking, more discussions, and of course more deliberations, if any. Please, let's make that happen during the next items that follow. Thank you so much. Let's have a good time ahead.